All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Daily Dimensions podcast. As always, I am your host, Smitty, back with another one, man. And today I am honored to have Brea Simone on the platform, man. And we're here giggling because it's like, God is already moving. It's already moving.
Always.
But
Always.
I'm happy to have you on the platform. Thank you for coming, man.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And it's something that I didn't expect. Like I did, but I didn't expect it now.
Yeah.
Because we don't know each other from like nothing.
Oh.
You feel me?
Right.
And I had reached out some months ago, not even trying to be like, yo, let's work kind of thing, but just something about your spirit just connected with mine. And I was like, okay, let me just reach out to her and be like, I see you. Yeah. I love what you're doing. Keep doing it.
Right.
And then you reached back out some months later and you was like,
I was like, God put on my spirit now.
Yeah.
Like, I need to reach out to you. So I was like, I'm going to be visiting. Definitely want to circle back, spin the block and see if we could sit down and chat.
And we're making it happen. Hopefully this is the first of many workings together.
I would like that.
But getting straight into it, there is I feel like there's two different Breas. Or like there's a Brea now and then there's a used to be Brea.
Yes.
And for those of you who are familiar with Brea Simone and her time here in Connecticut, who she was, you could go to any end of this state and people knew her. Like, I don't want to underestimate how like big your name was here, but it was big for different reasons than where your life has led you now.
Yeah.
And you posted this TikTok that said, when the devil thought he had me, and then you see the party in Brea, you see the bottles, and then it's like, then you see the baptized Brea, and I'm like, ain't God good?
No, thank you, Jesus.
So it's like, what clicked for you? What led to this person we see in front of us right now?
It's actually funny because this will probably be the first time I've actually spoke about my testimony, to the capacity that we're probably going to talk about today.
Oh man.
So exclusive.
You gotta love it, man. You gotta love it.
So I will say what did it for me was when COVID hit. I know a lot of people's lives shifted. Unfortunately, we lost some people. People lost jobs. There was a lot of stress around that time. Yeah. And it was actually a time for me where I was in complete isolation for the first time and I don't know how long. I used to be just doing the events back and forth to New York, Boston, Atlanta, everywhere. And I was just nonstop. I didn't know what it meant to rest. So when COVID came, I literally felt like God sat me down. And I've always had a relationship with God, but I wouldn't say to the capacity that I've grown it in the past few years. I knew God, but I didn't know God. Yeah. I think there's a difference between that people don't really understand fully what that looks like. But God was the homie. I would talk to God and everything. Yes, we cool. But that time I really felt his presence at a different capacity because I had no one else to talk to. I couldn't run away from the situation and try to hide in other places where I knew didn't fit for me anymore. Yeah. So once that uncomfortable level started to come about, I was like, what is this? And I'm stuff is being stripped from me, my job. I found a lot of purpose in my job. I found a lot of purpose in my event planning, where it was I wasn't putting a lot of my purpose into what God wanted me to be. Okay. And basically what he had already mapped out for me as a career and just everything regarding my footsteps on this earth. So when COVID happened and lost my job, it got to a point where no money was coming in, nothing. It was that's tough. Everything was cut off. It was so you got me now. God is I'm here. You gonna lean into me the way that you're supposed to? We gonna build this the way that we're supposed to? And that's when I started realizing strongholds that I had, ties that I had to certain things, stuff that I made idols out of. And I was that's not me. I was kind of putting purpose in things, like I said, that were not actually what I really enjoyed. As much as I love throwing events, like I'm a private person. I don't want to be on a stage sometimes.
Ain't it funny how that works?
Yeah, like I'm like,
So I don't really like being
I
around
don't really
people that
like
much.
doing this, but like people love it. So it's like, that's one of the things I really get a lot of fulfillment out of, is just making a fun environment for people. But I realized that there was other ways that I could be doing that. And I was like, yeah. So when everything got stripped, it was like, you just got me, like at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where the pivot started, and then the stripping was a very crazy process. So
you know, it's funny how God works. Like when he wants your attention, he's gonna grab it.
Oh yeah.
And he's gonna strip a lot of things from you.
He's gonna pull up on you and make it very evident. This gotta go, this gotta go, that gotta go. If you wanna come with me, that's gotta go. Dump it, cut that off. Very evident.
Immediately.
So,
like don't drag your feet too.
Yeah.
And it feels in the beginning like punishment almost.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, God, I love these things.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I'm used to. This
Yeah.
is my world. This is what I created. Like, I'm comfortable here.
Yeah.
And it's like, for God to really use us, he got to make us uncomfortable first.
Very much so. And it makes you realize that a lot of the stuff that we put our time and effort to is not really worth it at the end of the day. Because like when you put your time into materialism and all those types of things, like that's God's. Like that's not even ours. We start to think
Borrowing it,
this is us. Like no. Actually, I could take that from you real quick. So get it together. So that's an also like a realization that a lot of things started to occur for me. I was like, this stuff isn't mine. Like this is 100% yours. And if you actually want me to have it, you'll give it back. But if you don't, it's gone. So,
you know, you start to develop this relationship with God. You're getting deeper into that faith. At any part in that journey, does it start to feel like scary almost?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that for me, like I said, I always had a relationship with God, but I think I wasn't like always in the Word, or I wasn't always at a church or things like that. So a lot of the times you start to like have a second guess, like, am I hearing God or is this me? Like, is this my thing that I want to do or is this God? And then you're like, when you get to that point where it's uncomfortable, that's when you start to realize it is God. And you're like, well, I don't really want to do that because it's going to make me feel weird. And then you're like, oh, that can't be me because I wouldn't want to do that in the first place. So it's like, it's kind of scary because you don't know what's on the other side of it. Obviously he does because he already knows what's up, but it's like, we don't know. We can't even fathom in our minds, like, to understand that he just orchestrates everything so perfectly.
He's good at what he does.
He is good. So I think that scariness level and that spirit of fear, like, is one of those things that you kind of have to shut up, essentially, because that's what the enemy will use to be able to stop you from God's blessing. Like, he will 100% keep a spirit of fear around to be like, no, you can't do that. People gonna look at you like you crazy. Why would you do that? Like, that will really have you in your head.
Yo, the judgment, like that fear of being judged will really stop you from doing things,
it's unfortunate.
It'll hold you back.
Yeah.
So you mentioned like hearing from God.
Yeah.
And like, okay, that doesn't sound like me, or like this is making me uncomfortable. That must be him. Like, how do you really know? Because for a lot of new believers, especially, or for people who like are kind of like on the outside looking in, it's like, how do you know God's talking to you, or is it just voices in your head?
Right.
You know, like, are you crazy or something?
Right. I would say for me, what I always tell people when they ask for advice, like, how can I hear God's voice better? I'm like, you got to be in your word. Like, if you know how God speaks, then you know, like, when you hear it.
Yeah.
That's like the foundation for a relationship. That's with anybody. Like, when you have a child and like it's the mother, the baby knows the mom's voice, like just because they have that connection, they've been speaking, like it's constant back and forth communication. So it's like when you're in the word, you know what he sounds like. When you're in prayer, he hears you. When you give him time to respond back to you, like it's a relationship at the end of the day. So it's like the more you build up that intimacy in that relationship, the more you'll know, and you'll be able to say like the enemy is a liar. That's all he can do. He just lies. So if he's
talking to you, he's
lying. If he's opening his mouth to you, it's a lie.
It's straight lies.
So it's like if you know that something doesn't align with God's word, you can automatically pinpoint and be like, nah, that's the enemy. The part that becomes tricky sometimes is when we get in our own heads about stuff, where it's like, oh, I don't know. Is that really me? So like I always say, like, just to sit and pray on it to get the clarity, because God will reveal it to you if you seek it. Like he'll definitely reveal.
That's a fact. And I was watching a clip last night. Tim Ross said something very similar to what you just said. And it's about like being in your word, man. Because the more you know God's word is the more you kind of know his thought process.
Correct.
So when you hear something and you're like, okay, what would God think about this? How would he feel about that? And it's like, okay, if this is going to be pleasing to him, this must be him.
Right.
You know, like if it's not going to please him, like then that can't be God. That might be me, or that might be someone else, or that might be someone else like in my ear right now. So definitely knowing God's word. And I think that's the fast track to a deeper relationship with him too, because it's like to know, like in human relationships, love languages is a big thing, right? And it's like, that's God's love language, man. Like it's written in that book and you got to get to it. So I think that's like one of the biggest things anybody can do, especially if you're new in the faith, like get in your word. Go to them Bible studies. Cause I remember when I was younger, I was not trying to go to no Bible studies, but now
I'm like, please, let's sit down and let's get to this word together. What did you interpret? This is how I interpret it. Oh, I didn't think of it that way.
So, I didn't even see it like that. Yo, and the Bible is crazy like that because you'll read it once and it's like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
And you'll read it a couple months later and it's like,
like, I didn't even get that revelation the first time. Yeah.
It's like watching Game of Thrones for the second time. Like you watch it the second time, you're like, I missed this. Okay, I get it now. Like, and it makes that much more sense. It's exactly like that. But along with that relationship with God, you know, as you start to mature in that faith, you know, you're not a baby in the faith anymore. Now you're like an adult in the faith. There comes more. More is asked of you.
Of course, yes.
And a lot of what comes with being asked of you is obedience and submission. Yeah. And how do you handle being obedient to God's word at times where it's like, God, I'm not really trying to do this. Like, I don't want nothing to do with this right now, but I know it's what you want.
I always say that God knows you individually and that relationship that you all have, I would say based on, he knows you. So like your language is going to be different than the next person's language. So like God knows I'm hard-headed. So sometimes I need a couple signs before I'm like, I need you to just tell me again, like another way. So like I'm definitely
send it in a text message.
I was like, I need you to like have somebody call me. I need something to pop up, something. Like I'm definitely one of those sometimes. Like I am that daughter. So for me, when it comes to the obedience aspect, it can be difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Like it can definitely be hard when it's something that's out of your comfort zone. If it's me, for example, moving out of Connecticut, that was an act of obedience. That was God told me you're leaving Connecticut. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, huh?
So leaving Connecticut for
I was
what?
like, why? Like my whole life is here. Like I've established myself here. Like my family's here. Like what do you mean I'm leaving? You're leaving. And I was like, no. I was like, there's no, that can't be. Because for years I've had like a desire to go to Atlanta, but that was probably back in like 2017 that I've been wanting to move out there. So like when he said you're leaving, I was like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. But then so many things started happening after.
It started making
and it was
sense.
Like, so you gonna listen now? Because I showed you how this is gonna work, and I'm like, okay. But then there'll be other times like where it's like easy obedience, where it's like, I need you to call somebody and I need you to tell them this, or I need you to, if there's like someone homeless on the street or something, I need you to do this, or I want you to tithe this much. Like those are like quick for me. When it's something big and drastic,
monumental,
it kind of takes me a little bit longer. Forgive me, Jesus. But it's like
he understands. He knows our heart.
He knows my heart. So it's like I would say that that's a work in progress daily for me to act in swift obedience, because when you aren't acting in obedience and you're supposed to, it's disobedience. So it's a sin. Fact. So we don't want to do that.
Very easy to be disobedient.
Yeah.
It's very easy. And you mentioned something that it's like a minor detail, right? But it's a big detail at the same time. So you said like the things that are easier for you. So like tithing a certain amount, praying for this person, calling for that person. It's a time for that to be the easier thing for you to do. Because I know even in my walk, like those things was like hard for me. Like,
Yeah.
I gotta call somebody and
right.
talk to them.
I gotta
Like,
reach out and say this. They're gonna think I'm crazy.
I'm
Like,
are they gonna look at me funny?
but it's always interesting because, like you said, like God always knows. So it's when you do that and you follow in obedience, that other person like gets affected. It's like a trickle effect immediately. Like I've had people where I've reached out and they're like, "Oh my goodness, like I've been praying that God would boom, boom, boom."
Yes.
And I'm like,
I've had that.
And I'm like, thank you, God, for using me. Like, imagine if I didn't. Imagine if I didn't shift when you told me to shift.
And it be to the people you wasn't expecting to talk to.
No,
Like,
out of nowhere.
Really,
and you're like I've had the instances where like I've been on like planes and God has been like, you need to pray for that person. And I'm like, what? I'm like, huh? Excuse me, wait a minute. I don't know who that person is. Or I remember I was in Aruba and I went out to go eat for Christmas. Like I was by myself on this trip. It was like a me and Jesus trip. And there was a couple across from me and he was like, you're going to pay for their bill. And I was like, huh? So like I reached out and I was like, hey, I would love to cover your bill. They're like, no,
you
absolutely
ain't look at
not.
what was on their plate first?
No, I was like, whatever it is.
Some lobster
it definitely was a steak place. So man. I was like, okay, God. So, but that opened a door for them because they were from New Jersey. So like they had family from up in this area. We had a whole conversation. Then the table next to them, they're from New York. So we're all like, it's all working together. All a thing. And I was just like, it's crazy how like one little thing that God kind of points you in a direction to do could do so much because they were older and they were just like so happy that like someone was talking to them and that, you know, that was their Christmas essentially. So it doesn't always work out to the capacity that you may think that it does, but just that one little step.
Yeah. And like you said, it's that domino effect, man, because you never know how much it's going to impact somebody.
Exactly.
I've had moments where like I'm in church and, you know, I'm sitting next to somebody, I don't know this person, and God's like, pray for that person next to you. I'm like, I don't know, God. But then once you do it, then you see how much it really impacted them and like how they just leave feeling so fulfilled. And like just something about being obedient to God just always yields some amazing results.
It's great. It's a great feeling. And then because when you don't, you get like, sometimes for me, if I don't release a word when I'm supposed to, I get a really bad stomach ache or my head hurts. So like I had one time where like I get a lot of dreams. So like I woke up from a dream and I had to reach out to a friend of mine that I hadn't spoken to in a long time. And I had to tell him exactly what I got out of the dream. Yeah. And I remember like doing it, I couldn't breathe. Like it was that heavy for me. Like and as soon as I pressed send, it was like, whoosh. And I was like, oh. Okay, we're good now. Yeah, I let it off. I did my part. I did what that's it. Now that's yours. I released how I needed to, but sometimes it gets that heavy. So I think more as you continue to better your relationship and you stand in your obedience to the capacity that you're supposed to, you get a lot more and more is required of you. Yes. So it's like you have to also be prepared for that as well, and then pray for the covering and asking God for wisdom on how to move forward in those type of areas too. So it's a lot of layers.
Definitely a lot of layers to it.
It's a lot of layers.
A lot of layers to it. And one thing that like was unexpected for me. So I did an episode where I talked about how God asked me to like be obedient in a way I did not really expect. So he asked me to give my car away. Yeah. And I was like, God, I need a car. What are you talking about? So like even to this point, I don't have a car right now, but he asked me to give my car away. Yeah. And I don't really go around telling people that because it's like I'm not trying to like be that guy. But when people did find out, they were like, God, why would you do that? And I'm like, God, you know, like I don't go into great. I'm like, God asked me to. Like, he told me to. And then I ran into people where like you do that good thing, and then they're like, well, God wouldn't tell you to do something like that. And then I'm like, all right, see, we got to have a conversation now because he really would ask you to do something like that. You feel me? Like if you get in your word, you know he would ask you to give away everything.
Yes, 100%.
You know? And have you ever had a moment, or like how do you handle people who look at your walk with God and they're like, that why would God ask you to do that? Yeah. You know, they have questions about your faith.
I would say that has been a struggle because a lot of people just don't understand, but that's just human nature. So it's like one of those things where you have to have more grace in that area for individuals. I always try to explain it to a capacity that makes sense to them, without trying to dilute what actually happened and what the power of God is at the end of the day. But I would say I like using those instances the most because people can see the power of God through you, through what those things are that you're actually doing and executing. Because a lot of people, like I said, they live in fear. So they don't want to be able to, they don't want to sit back and be like, oh, I can't leave my job. How am I going to pay my bills? Like, how's this and that? Where it's like, it could be taken from you. And then what you going to do?
And
because
you ain't got no choice.
Then what? So it's like hello. It's like one of those things where your faith gets tested on a daily. So it's like, if I can be an example of what that looks like when you actually do the big thing, I 100% would do it every single time I have the opportunity to. Like, I will testify and just be like, God told me to do this. I didn't want to, but I listened.
And look at it now.
Look at where we're at. So it's like, if that one little mustard seed could be just taken care of in that one person, I planted the seed or whatever, and I know that eventually it's going to grow into what it needs to, I did my job. So I would say I'm a walking testimony.
Come on
with
now.
a lot of stuff.
Come on
so
now.
just being able to be that for God is a blessing within itself. So, yeah.
And then, one of the biggest questions I wanted to ask you, of course, along this walk, there's a lot of separation that takes place.
Oh, yeah.
And, I've seen it in my life. I've seen it in other people's life, where it's like the deeper you get into God, more things just fall off of you. And sometimes those things are people in your life. So how have you navigated like the separation from individuals in your life? Because sometimes it's even people who you are like really close with. Like you never saw yourself being without, and now here we are.
I would say that you lose a lot of people on this walk. Like, it's inevitable because certain people just can't come with you, and you kind of have to be okay with that. Where it's kind of like, if I'm on a path and I'm trying to go this way, but you want to go that way, like, you can't pull me back with you to go that way. Because I've already cut myself off from like bad habits or just being in certain environments and stuff like that, where we don't see eye to eye on stuff anymore. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's a hard sacrifice, but if at the end of the day that there's a bigger blessing on the other side of it, it makes it worth it. It sucks because you do start to do life with people, and it's like, I can't bring you. Like, I can't keep bringing you with me, because it'll be one thing where you'll just end up in a vicious cycle. Like, you'll literally get here and then get pulled back, and then you just circle. So it's like, don't nobody got time to be doing that no more. Like, I've already gone through deliverance. I got my stuff stripped from me. Like, there's no way that I'm going to allow somebody in my space that I know can pull me back. It's just, it's not worth it for me. So I think that if more people understood like what happens behind closed doors when you're stripping yourself from somebody, they would respect it a little bit more. Like, I appreciate, I've had people where, we've had agreements where we're like, we're just not good for each other anymore from a friendship standpoint. Relationships too, where it's just like, this chapter is done.
It's just
like,
not it
it's just not it. There's no growth that's going to come from here, and I wish you the best. But
I don't hate you.
I don't hate you. Still love you. Want you to do as great as you can. But I can't be here with you anymore. We can't do life together anymore. So it's just one of those things that comes with it, unfortunately. Jesus had his people that were following. He had his disciples. And as we go through the story, people drop off, and you meet people. Some people stay, some people go. Like that. That's just a part of this process, this walk. It's not an easy walk, and at certain times you will be by yourself, but God is there with you to make sure that you're taken care of to the capacity that you need to, and He will send the people. You lose a friend, trust me, you gonna send the right people back.
He'll send that village around.
Yes, He really will. So that part I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for being able to do seasons with people, and us to be able to be helpful to each other as we need to in that season, and then be able to walk away respectfully and say, I had a great time with that person. We had a good relationship, but it's time for something new. So
okay. And you mentioned doing life with people.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you talk about like doing life with people in a dating relationship sense, how has your walk with God impacted your view on just the whole dating world as it is now?
Oh, well, dating scene is already like terrible from
It's
a worldly perspective, and I would say there's also a pocket in the Christian community that a lot of people make idols out of marriage. So it's kind of, you know, you get your peace over here in the world and you get your peace over here in the kingdom. So it's like you kind of have to, you know, really act in your discernment as strong as you can to know who is actually supposed to be here right now and who's not. So I would also say, just from a relationship standpoint, when you really, I know like they say dating isn't in the Bible, but when you really like are intentionally dating someone and really getting to know them and letting God lead you to how you're supposed to be together and whatnot, and honoring, you know, what God says you can do in a relationship, what you can do in a relationship, what you can't do before marriage. Like I think that you get to see a lot of people's true colors, because you can just cross people off the list immediately. Like when you, like some people, they won't want to abstain from like sex before getting married. There's people that are like, no, I'm not following that.
That's
like
immediately
I gotta
weeding out a lot
it's
of
immediately
people.
you're crossed off the list. Like, so it's like you kind of really get this little tiny pool of people where it's not, you just like aren't really attracted to people that aren't in the same like walk in the point of your life that you are. So it really weeds a lot of people out. I will say that that's a helpful thing, but the discernment part too, just to be like, not everybody is your kingdom spouse.
That's a fact.
Not everybody. Just because you got a compliment and you know they said that you are pretty and they want to do Bible study with you, that does not mean that is your kingdom spouse. You know, that could be your brother or sister in Christ.
That's it.
So it's being able to make sure that you're not making an idol out of that. You kind of have like your checklist or whatever. I know that people say like, don't do a checklist because God can always, you know, change what your checklist looks like. But being open, I would say too, is really important, because I've heard a lot of people say that when they've met their husband or their wife, oh, I probably wouldn't have been as attracted to them, or this or that and the third, or I probably wouldn't have done this, but God, like, you know, kind of led me towards this person and I was more open because of that. Where it's like, your type may not really be who you are going to be with. Like, it's because we're so wrapped up in what the world says a relationship looks like.
So, we want that Hallmark Christmas card looking relationship.
And that's not it. Being in relationships is a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of dying to your flesh and, you know, doing something that's going to honor and glorify God at the end of the day. It's not about you. Where in the world, it's me. Yeah,
it's like, what can I get from
What can I get from this? I want to be social media famous with my relationship. I want to post pictures and all this kind of stuff. Where that should not be the foundation.
So we got to be relationship goals. We got to be that couple.
Like, are you honoring God in your relationship? If you can't say yes to that, I don't want to hear about you being goals. That's what it comes down to. And that, like I said, that's the worldly perspective of it, where there's a huge disconnect to what doing life with someone is actually supposed to look like.
Yes.
So.
Oh, man. I love that answer, man. We could do this for hours. Like, for hours. Man, okay. So the next thing I want to ask you about is Christian TikTok.
Yeah.
Christian TikTok is really a thing, man.
It's huge.
And, like, my algorithm is entirely different now.
Yes.
I was hesitant to get on TikTok, and then I got on there. And honestly, I thank TikTok for reconnecting, for making this happen.
Yeah.
Because you just popped up in my feed. And I'm like, I know her. And then I was like, oh, she is different now. Like, everything is different now. And then I was like, let me follow her.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, because I liked your stuff, TikTok just got real aggressive with the Christian TikToks. And it's like, here I am now. But how has that become an extension of how you reach people?
Oh, I love TikTok. Like, I definitely was one of those people where, like, TikTok is what you make it. I used to think it was just that straight dancing app, and I was like, I'm not that.
I'm too old to be out here.
I'm not that girl. Like, I'm not, I don't want to do the little viral dances. I don't want to do that. No.
You don't want? No.
So for me, when I felt led to join the app finally, like there would be instances where God would tell me what, like I would come across sounds and he'd be like, you could flip it like this. Yeah. You could flip it like this. So I would take a lot of the trending sounds and turn them into like Christian based like content. Yeah. Where I was like, I don't even know how I come up with half of this stuff. And obviously it's not me. Like it's all God. So like, yeah. So for me, it's a very interesting community because on TikTok specifically, there's a lot of kids on there. Yes. So it's amazing and beautiful to see a lot of the kids being like, I love Jesus, I love God, and being like in their word, like that is amazing to me because I wasn't doing that at that age. Like, I know I wasn't. Like, I honestly was not. I'm not going to lie to you about that. Like, I was not. I was probably doing stuff at 13, 15 that I probably shouldn't have been doing. But, like, there's kids that are, like, going to church. They're in the word. Like, know their scripture. Like, show that they have a relationship with God. Yeah. And it's, like, it's very beautiful. So
it's amazing to see.
Yeah. So it's, like, they're spreading the gospel in there. Then people are like, oh, I didn't know this or this, that. So it's like people are learning through that app as well. I will say there's a lot of people that like to speak words on the app and give prophetic words. And I'm like,
some of that is like,
I'm like, test the spirit, please. Yeah. Like, it's okay to like, if you feel led to release something, but sometimes it's like not, that message may not be for everybody. And like I said, a lot of the kingdom marriage stuff is all over.
It's all over TikTok. There's a lot of that.
So I like to keep it fun. Like I will say, like I did a funny video like last week, around the same time I did the enemy thought he had me video. I did a video and it was like, just something funny. It was like the trend was you like looking at the screen like you get a text message from somebody that you don't want to hear from. So I did one from like a Christian standpoint that like you went through deliverance, you threw up, you was trying to cut the soul tie and all that kind of stuff. And that almost hit like 500,000 views. Man. And I was like,
but you know, it resonated with people.
It did, and that's the thing. Like, it's like this resonating content where people are like, "Wow, are we all going through this?" Like,
it wasn't just me.
It wasn't just me. I didn't throw it. I threw up too. Like all this stuff, and it's just like a lot of the times when God gives me that, I don't know what its purpose is at the end of the day. But it was also like a reminder for people that sometimes even when you do fall back into a situation like a soul tie or something like that, you can get yourself out of it like 100%. Because like a lot of people in the comments were like, I fell back. I'm so sorry, God. Like I'm trying. So it's like you being able to step out and be like honest about that is already taking a step to really cutting and like kicking the enemy in the throat. Because it's like you can't keep this tie.
And I feel like we need more of that. More people just being honest and transparent. Because if we're real about it, a lot of us are all going through the same things.
Yes.
You know, whether you're deep in that Christian community or not, just going through life, a lot of us are going through so many of the same things.
Yeah.
And if we don't talk about it, we're just gonna all suffer in silence.
Right.
And you need that community. So it just starts with being honest and transparent and just stepping out and being the one. And I like how you're doing it on your platform. Like you said, your stuff is funny. Like I really be there like 2 a.m, like crying. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. And I'm like laughing at it. Like this is good.
It's fun. It's definitely fun. And like they always say that like testimonies like piss off hell because when somebody else can relate to a testimony and be like, wow, I went through that too. And then they see what you look like when you came out of it. Like when I did the enemy thought he had me one, people are like, everybody just glows so much like once they meet Jesus. Like that's a thing.
It's a different glow.
It's very different.
People see it on you.
Yeah. And Holy Spirit be resonating here in this body. Yeah. It's gonna be glowing. So it's
like I said, when you pulled up, right? So y'all need to know. Like she wrote me, she said, I'm here, and immediately the presence of God just right here in this basement just overwhelmed me. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, she's here.
God is
like
good.
She has arrived.
God is good.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
And this is one that's just coming to me. You know, as you entered into your walk with God, is there anything that you wish you knew beforehand?
Oh, a lot of things.
That, you know, would have helped make that transition easier for you?
Yes. Everything.
Everything. Every last part.
I will say, there was just a lot of things I didn't know. Like, I grew up in church, but I couldn't fully fathom like the stories like of Jesus. Like at that age, it didn't really make sense to me. And I kind of like, you know, you check the box sometimes as like a baby Christian where you're like, I go to church, I read the Bible, I know like which story comes first, and I know Genesis, and you know all these little things, and it's just like you check the box, but like you forget about that foundational part of the relationship where it's like you can go to school and you can learn a bunch of stuff, but then it's like if you don't apply it,
then
why did you go to school? Like, why did you go and take all the classes and everything like that? So for me, it was the application point that I wish that I stepped into a lot earlier, because I would have saved a lot of time. I would have saved a lot of time, a lot of headaches, a lot of tears, like all that stuff. But I'm thankful for what I did go through to get here, because now I can use what I went through to kind of help somebody else, because a lot of the times people don't have anybody that looks like them to be able to say, okay, I can do that too. Like a lot of the times, like growing up, like the pastors are all older in the church. Like now we've got like churches now where like people are like maybe 5 years, 6 years older than me. Yeah. And it's like, I can relate to you.
Yes,
like
they dress different, they talk different.
Everything like you
look like me.
Exactly. So it's like, I wouldn't trade any of that to have learned it earlier, just because I know that God had to do it this way for a reason. For whatever the impact needs to be, just to bring the glory back to him at the end of the day. And I'm thankful for that. But there was a lot of things that I could have avoided. There was a lot.
But it's not wasted.
It's not wasted.
It's all a lesson.
It's not wasted. It's been a journey. But a lot of the things I'm blessed to be able to have made it through, to be able to like even sit here today and talk about it with you.
Yeah, man. So let me ask you this: what's next for Brea Simone, man?
Whatever God's got lined up for me. I would say I'm starting to pick up Brea Simone things that like I did in the world, but now taking it over to the kingdom. So like utilizing my platform for awareness for other people, like that's a strong suit for me. Like God utilizes me for others. That's something that's never going to change. But like I want to start to do more in like the Christian hip hop community area, the Christian R&B area, like those type of things. Like I used to do all the showcases and stuff like that. So it would be fun to be able to do that again. So that's, I'm going in the pocket of the music now. I'm coming across all the people that are just dope, like really, really good Christian music. A lot of people think it's like not good. They're like, Christian music.
No, it's actually good.
Slaps.
You just gotta get used to it. You gotta get used to it.
There's a lot of people that can like actually like, I've heard people that give me like a New York sound, or some people that give me like a down south sound, or there's like,
I'm still adjusting to that.
Yeah, it's like it's different.
I like Christian music, but I still get them. You know, I still have my moments where some other stuff getting played. But.
Yeah, the secular music. It's baby steps for me. It was when I started changing over, like I had to take baby steps with it. Like I had to like stop listening to music that like had profanity in it, like so like I purposely went on my phone and put on the setting where no explicit music will play. So it's like it's baby steps through that. Like I listen to a lot of old school stuff, but even some of that stuff is not that good. Like it's not appropriate.
When you really get deep into it, it's like, oh, okay, I understand what you're saying.
That conviction will hit you. It will slap you right upside the head, and it's like, okay, I can't listen to that.
It hit me with Caribbean music.
Oh yeah.
I don't like, that's the one thing I definitely have stopped. And I was like, because everything they sing about is what we're not supposed to be doing. And I'm
Period.
Like, I can't. So, but I remember being in them parties. That's the first thing that had to go for me.
Yeah.
Everything else is a little harder.
Yeah.
But that was the first thing that had to go.
Certain things will just not sit with your spirit. Like I will say that. Like even outside of music, it'll be in certain environments. It'll be like with certain people, it'll be everything. Like you'll get a little in your spirit, and you'll be like, "What was that?" You're like, "Am I supposed to be doing this right now?"
I shouldn't be here right now.
I shouldn't. I think I need to leave.
Yeah, it's time to go. It's time to go.
It'll start to hit for you, and it's like you can't ignore it. So music was one of those things for me where I was like, I can't listen. And it started before I even realized it was happening. Like, I couldn't listen to a lot of the new stuff. I'm like, I can't listen to this.
Oh, no, a lot of this new stuff is weird. It's different. It's strange. It's like, I'm that old person now. Like, what is this?
Yes.
What are we doing right
I have 100% hit that age where I'm like, turn this off. It's too loud.
This is what y'all like now? This isn't good. This isn't good.
Turn it off. So it's been fun being able to step into the Christian music scene of things because I love coming across like new artists. I love coming across all that kind of stuff. So it's like brought a place of fulfillment back to me again because I was missing that. I was like, oh, I miss being able to come across new people and new music and tell my friends and share it out. Like that was something I really enjoyed doing. And now it's like, oh, we're going to spread the gospel through this.
We doing this. We on it now.
Yeah. So I do that with all my friends now. They're like, they'll come in the car and I'll be playing the music. And they're like, who's this? Who's this? I'm like, we back, baby.
So we got them.
We back.
Right where we want them. We got them. Oh, man. And then let me ask you this final question.
Yes.
What is one, when you think about a young Brea Simone, like yay high, you know?
Little baby.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to that version of yourself?
That's a great question. I would probably tell her, you know best. I would say a lot of people try to control your life and what it's supposed to look like, where at a young age, like that's when we're the most pure and the world hasn't really gotten to us.
Yeah.
Where a lot of those outside things can't affect you. So I would say that when I knew certain things or certain things were happening to me at a young age, like to not ignore that. Like, you know who you are, you know what you're capable of doing. And regardless of what this world tries to tell you or what anybody else tries to tell you, like you know what's up. You follow what you know. Don't let anybody tell you anything else.
Exactly.
And just do you, because at the end of the day, your life is your life. Like, it's not anybody else's life but your own. So don't allow anybody else to come in and make decisions for you. Like, God knows what you're supposed to be doing, who you already are. It's already written. And don't let anybody else come in and try to take that away from you.
Love that answer, man. Love that. All right. And then where can everybody follow you? You know, get all these funny Christian TikToks and support and all that good stuff.
Brea Simone on every platform. Instagram. TikTok has an extra A. Because I think I tried to make a TikTok a long time ago, and it didn't work out. And it took the name. So it's Brea Simone, but you can still find it as Brea Simone on everything.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. And until next time, this is Daily Dimensions. Peace.